Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Citrix Workspace, a better, more intelligent way to work. My name is Robin Castle, and I'm going to be your host for today's presentation. Our featured speaker today is Calvin Chu, Vice President of Product Marketing at Citrix. And before we get started, I would like to cover a couple of housekeeping details. First, we will have a dedicated question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them using the Ask a Question window in the webinar interface. Also, this event is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the on-demand version in a follow-up email. With that, I would like to now hand it over to Calvin to start the presentation. Welcome, Calvin, and thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks a lot, everyone. So I want to start this conversation with our vision statement about what it is we're doing at Citrix and what is so unique and new about our new approach to work. And the simple statement around this is that Citrix is now singularly focused on powering a better way to work. The significance of this statement is really that focus on the people aspect, how work gets done. And less so about maybe the technology and the infrastructure, what it is we use to deliver applications, the networking, and really trying to break it down to how does work get done, right? Work doesn't get done by devices, it gets done by people. Work doesn't get done by applications, it gets done by actions. It's not networks that make work get done, it is the connectivity and the collaboration that happens between those people and those actions. So really thinking about it this way and focusing on that key word of work has really influenced and driven the way we've been building our solutions over the last couple of years in particular, and our path forward into the future. And I think a lot of the ways that we'll align with many of you, our customers. So starting with that idea of work, it is more complex than ever, right? There are certainly external pressures on each one of our organizations to not only maintain our security and deal with global competition, address regulatory requirements, but also transform a lot of our businesses into digital business models and modernizing the way we get things done, using automation in different ways. And so there's all this change that's happening and being pressured from outside of our organizations. As well as then inside, we're trying to build new work models. We're trying to innovate, provide new products and services. We're attacking strategies to acquire new technologies and get in and out of businesses as we respond to the global markets. And really just drive the processes internally so that we can get more done, get more productivity, get more engagement out of employees. So work is getting more and more complicated. But of course, work doesn't happen without people. And one of the problems that we have today globally is that a number of people that we have that are in sort of medium to highly skilled types of roles has never been shorter, right? We've never had so much of a shortage as we do right now. Whether it's the Wall Street Journal or Gartner or BCG covering it, they're all echoing the statements that they're hearing from the C-suite, saying that we're having trouble finding the talent, we're having trouble retaining them, engaging them, and in fact, if we look at some of the global studies like done by McKinsey, we're actually anticipating a shortage of almost 95 million medium to high skilled workers globally in the next year. And that is based on just the expectations for productivity, the expectations for how we expect global revenues to grow, and what we're going to need to get there in a new digital economy. What's even worse about that is that we're having trouble finding them, we're having trouble getting them, and then we're having trouble keeping them, right? So up to 85% of employees are disengaged at work. That means that they're either distracted by other things that are happening, or they're not quite sure if the organization they're working at right now is the one for them. There's all sorts of levels of spectrum of what disengagement means. But it means that only really that about 15% of your employees are fully committed, actively involved, and suited with the right tools to be able to do their work and feeling like that they're set up for success and for helping the organization advance forward. So this is certainly a major challenge, and in particular, the technology aspect of it is becoming, people are becoming increasingly aware that it is a major factor in attracting people to your organization. Do they like the tools that they're given to use? Do they feel that the processes that they're being asked to engage in and support and innovate around are supported by the right technologies? Right? You think about the folks entering the workforce now. These are now digital natives. They have expectations about what their experiences with technology should be like, and what they should be able to accomplish, and what resources from around the internet they should be able to access. And by and large, employees are one of the largest problems that they're feeling. And when you survey some of these folks that are part of that 85% of disengaged employees, they point to technology as an issue. And it's not just employees, but the IT leaders as well. So most IT leaders actually believe and understand that employee experience is critical to their digital transformation, and therefore the technologies that they're putting in place around that transformation are critical to the employee experience. And so we need to take a people-centric approach. We need to be thinking about how do they interact with their technology, and how can we start streamlining what they're using. And this is a fairly complex challenge. The ones that get this right, they are definitely seeing benefits to their organization, both monetarily as well as in customer satisfaction, profitability, and so there's definitely a goal out there. There is a reason to focus on employee experience and to focus on this transformation, because there are very real results out there that are attainable. So what gets in our way, right? What creates those stoplights and those bumps in the road that really make it difficult for us to achieve those levels of productivity and engagement? So one analogy I like to use is really folks around that all-in-one business copier, fax, scanner machine that sits in most people's offices, right? And this is a classic example of where you have a fairly simple task. You want to make a copy of a physical document, but on that machine are actually just an incredible number of features and functions that most of us have no idea how to use. Right? There's maybe one person in an office that knows what all these different functions do, how to do the double-sided staple, color copy, collated type of stuff, and pretty much everybody else just wants to hit the green button, and that is what we want. Right? We want simple, one-click actions that are targeted on what is going to get the task done, not every single corner case or variation of how to do it. And so, this type of environment is very easily, or this type of analogy is very easily translated into our enterprise application experience. So think about, if you have an intranet site and the portal and the number of links that show up there, and it is an overwhelming experience for the employee. And yet we rely on that as an organization to say, oh, we'll just put it on the intranet and then job done. Right? We kind of wipe our hands clean and say, okay, we told people about it. Or you think about the applications that we provision out to our end users, and they get this massive catalog of applications, and each one of those now then becomes when you launch it, has its own experience, has its own interface, its own paradigms for how you navigate through different windows. And that's very complex. And a lot of the functionality that's built in here are like all those excess buttons on that copier, right? You don't know what they do. You're trained actually, you go through a lot of the trainings for these enterprise applications. You're taught to ignore a bunch of stuff to try to get to the important button that you need to press, or the particular field that you need to get to. And it's not that these applications are bad. These are best-in-class types of applications. It's just that they are designed for every use case to be enterprise-ready and to be fully functional for someone in a particular group in an organization, like these expense reporting systems are designed for everyone from the person who has to file one receipt for some office supplies to the financial analyst that's looking at everything, and the accountants on the back end that need to know exactly how things were tracked and done. Right. So, we're creating this complex scenario where we have just way too many applications, and you think about like any task that you try to get done during the day. You may be hopping between a messaging app, a CRM application, your email, team collaboration types of tools, reporting tools, and trying to use all those just to complete one task and answer a question that someone might have asked of you. So you've got a lot of applications that you're bouncing between. The reality is that you're probably only using very little of each one of those applications. And that may mean that you're using a small fraction of the functionality, maybe just one or two buttons or a few fields within an application. Or it may mean that you use something only once a quarter to file your performance review, or once every several months to schedule your pay time off. These types of things, you're using very little of that application, and then that actually creates more complexity in the rare times that you go in and use it. And you have to try to remember how you did it last time. Remember your login again, if that's changed due to password reset policies. And the end result also then is that you're bouncing between these applications that you're not really familiar with, and you come up with this phenomenon called context switching. You're going in between different applications. Every time you switch applications, you're distracted. That distraction can be worth or cause up to 20 minutes worth of a roundabout circuitous path where you get distracted, you get down on a different path, you start hunting and pecking for the right information that you need, and at the end of 20 minutes, you finally come back and you complete the task that you set out to do. Right? So we're creating a lot of complexity and creating a world where it's difficult to get even simple things done. There's something to be said for mobility and mobile devices and allowing us to have access to information from wherever we are. But that experience of too much context switching and too many applications is even worse on a mobile device, right? Because it takes over the entire screen, and you don't have this sort of paper trail of windows that you're using to try to complete a workflow. It's very easy to get distracted, certainly on a mobile device, social media, and all kinds of other things that might be out there conspiring against you from being your most productive and doing your best work. So all of that complexity really says, there is an opportunity here. And we do believe that there is a better way to get this work done. We believe that there are ways of streamlining these applications into action and focusing on what people need to actually get their tasks completed. In order to do that, at Citrix, we really think very carefully about balancing the experience, the security capabilities, as well as the flexibility and choice that we're providing both IT and end users, whether it's the device choice or it is, where do I want to work from, location flexibility, or it's more IT-related choices about which clouds, which infrastructure, which types of networks do I want to use, right? And it's the balance of these three things that is absolutely vital to Citrix and how we drive this vision forward. It's very easy to say I'm going to be very secure, but I'm going to do that by limiting all choices and creating a very restrictive end user experience. And the end result of that is that end users just work around you, or you become an unattractive place to work, right? So it becomes difficult to recruit or retain people. So every time we look at a new feature or capability, every time we look at roadmap items, we're always judging whether we're adequately balancing these three elements of experience, security, and choice. And we deliver the experience, security, and choice through three primary technology categories. And we think about sort of what faces the end user and the resources that they need to use as the workspace. The connective tissue, the things that bring and connect the different applications and data repositories and clouds and data centers as the networking aspect. And then the information that we gather from all of those components, as well as partnerships throughout the ecosystem, is part of that analytics. And as I go through and I talk about this new way of working and the workspace with intelligence experience built into it, the key thing to keep in mind is that it's not really these, I'm not going to be talking about 3 different product categories per se. It's really the union of these things, where they overlap and where they support each other, that will become evident. And you can't have a workspace without networking, and you're not really understanding what's going on in terms of productivity and work and engagement without the analytics. So these are all intimately intertwined with each other. So with that said, let's take a look at the new Citrix Workspace. And ever since we introduced this, now almost a couple of years ago, the promise of the workspace has always been to provide everything you need or an end user needs to be productive all in one experience. Right? So we're bringing together multiple disparate applications, data sources, clouds, et cetera, and trying to bring that together in a cohesive way. And that is rapidly evolving, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. Most of you probably, when you think about Citrix, or if you've been working with Citrix technologies for a while, you probably think of us as this right now. So this is our most deployed way of getting to Citrix resources, and that's the storefront. And effectively, this is an application catalog primarily of virtualized apps and desktops. And now this is actually, quite dated. This is, what things were like a couple of years ago. And last year, we introduced the new workspace that is now expanding upon just virtualized apps and desktops, bringing in SaaS applications, as well as being able to aggregate multiple sources of SaaS, web, virtual applications, virtual desktops that are on-prem or in the cloud. Right? And so this is just a much more flexible aggregation point for all of that. And we also introduced the ability to have files in here as well. So the documents or the knowledge and the data that people are working on are all built into this workspace experience and become much more than just VDI. Right? So one of the things that's very important as we start to look at the new workspace and the intelligent capabilities is to get rid of this myth that the workspace is just VDI and really start thinking about all of the applications, all the content that all employees need. The term workspace, by the way, is used by a number of folks in the industry. It is a fairly generalized term, and many people will use it to mean specific things. And some vendors do use the word workspace to really specifically talk about just the virtual desktop. But make no mistake, that is not how Citrix is looking at it. We think of it as the central hub for really how work will get done, and that means supporting a lot more than virtual desktops. Certainly inclusive of the virtual desktops, but that's not the only thing. So what we're doing is we're taking that experience of many applications and many windows, and we're distilling those applications into what we'll call these personalized units of work, so to speak, right? So we kind of look at all that application chaos that's going on, and we say, okay, what are the actual actions that people are trying to take out of this environment? And can we now aggregate that and build that back into a workspace that says, rather than focusing on, hey, let me just present you with a bunch of different applications, let me actually take you into an environment that actually helps to guide your work and inform you on what things you need to do, and almost hide which applications those actions are coming from. Right? So we're going to be building in more direct actions that you can take inside the workspace, and really designing this around a personalized experience for that end user. It is their actions. It's the things. It starts to learn their behaviors. It knows what things a particular employee does regularly at the end of a work week on Friday at 5 p.m. And start to guide or recognize what those things are. And this is part of the intelligence that we'll be talking about. So it's grabbing all of these resources in from a multitude of applications and data sources, creating this workspace experience both on desktop and on mobile. And then, of course, people collaborate in order to get work done. Being able to take some of those actions and information and insights that happen inside the workspace and deeply integrating with other team collaboration types of environments like Microsoft Teams or a SharePoint intranet or G Suite or Slack or email, right? So the way to think of this is, if we kind of understand how does Workspace interplay with some of these other team collaboration solutions, the Workspace is about personal productivity for that individual user, and then integrating in with the other team collaboration type of solutions. As we get into this, you'll see that we're drawing a lot of inspiration from around the industry, and in particular from consumer type experiences. Right? We know that that this is sort of the expectation of the workforce coming in. It's also just frankly an easy way to work, an easy way to understand how to use an application or how to use this workspace. Right? We think about a lot of these social media applications, Twitter, for example. Right? Like, when was the last time you saw a user manual for Twitter? It doesn't exist. You just open the application and you immediately understand what to do inside of it. And that's equally valuable for the new generation of workers that's coming in, as well as some of your your older generation of workers that have very easily adapted to a lot of these applications that exist on our phones and tablets today. So some of the core concepts that we're building into the workspace include things like the idea of a feed, right? So a curated, intelligent, machine learning driven notification feed of activities and events that learn your patterns. The idea of notifications themselves, right? So getting very specific information that pops up, telling you when you need to do things or alerting you of an upcoming activity. One-click actions, so little micro apps, if you will, that are designed to help you check in to a flight or check into your hotel room. Right? It's just review your information and click, and you're done and completed with that. And then lastly, this whole idea of a recommendation engine. As I said, something that learns what it is you're doing. There's some analytics that are going on in the background and saying, hey, would you like to look at this document that 50 of your coworkers in similar roles have already looked at? Or this got a thumbs up from 100 other people in your organization. Maybe you want to check it out, right? So that whole idea of building in not just the things that you already know that you want to use, but maybe things that you might want to use that you don't know about yet, and making those types of intuitive or intelligent recommendations. And so this is the core of how we're building this, the new workspace, and developing this concept. So sort of how do you get there? What are some of the phases that we look at? Well, first, in order to really start building this workspace, we do need to have an aggregation or a unification point. And you can kind of think of the phase that we've been in, or the journey we've been on over the last year with the idea of the workspace as the start of that. We're bringing together the apps, the content on a multitude of devices. It is really just the unification, or if you will, the organization of work that we're bringing together inside of the workspace as it has stood for the last several months. Right? So all the applications are available through that workspace landing page, if you will. What happens next really is once you have that aggregation of applications, and we start to build APIs in order to be able to pull out things like notifications, we can start to extract what the actionable information is coming from those applications. So all those applications are serviced through the workspace. They start sending out their typical types of notifications. We can kind of take that and start to actually guide the work then that's happening. We can say, we understand that these notifications are coming in, they're coming in a certain order, and start to understand the priority of those things. Sometimes they'll be time-based, sometimes they may be based on who it is that's sending the notification, or what application it is, or what time in the quarter it is, is it urgent for quarter closing, and take the organization that we created and start to guide the work. Once we are able to start guiding the work and we understand what types of actions are happening out of those applications, that's when things start to get really interesting, where the workspace can actually help assist in those interactions and actually start automating things like pulling out a pipeline report at the end of the week when John Smith typically looks at it. And that's the phase that we think of as automating work. So our journey along this way, and we want to think about the broader vision of how we're going to power a better way to work. We started by organizing applications, organizing resources. Then now we're starting to guide that work. And as people start to use it, and we start collecting insights and start using the telemetry that's available through the Citrix end-to-end solution, we can actually then start automating and making work simpler and better. All right, so let's take a look at actually what the new version of the workspace will look like. So to this point, you've seen a variety of application launcher types of interfaces. And what the new workspace looks like is significantly different, but still very intuitive. So the first thing you'll probably notice is that that world of application icons is no longer front and center and the main part of the real estate of this interface, right? It's actually moved off to the side. Right at the top there you have a virtual assistant and search, right? So this search will search anything in the workspace, any application, any document that is accessible through it. And over time, as we build in more and more intelligence, you can think of the assistant as a way of more natural language interaction with it, saying, hey, can you help me see how many PTO days I have left, and answer simple questions like that. Right? So I'm trying to build in a business type of virtual assistant into this interface. The bulk of the real estate in the center there, under the number 2 in the orange, is the personalized feed. So this feed is your actions, your insights, as well as what we'll talk about as micro apps in a second. And these get organized then, in this case it's just organized by date, but it could be organized by, did they come in from my manager? Is it, did I receive a notification 6 weeks ago for an important meeting that's happening in 2 weeks from now? So maybe the priority of that notification starts climbing up the list, right? Much in the way that a social media feed learns behaviors, learns priorities, learns interests and likes, that's exactly how this feed works here inside the workspace. On the right-hand side are your pin components, right? If you do need to go into an actual application and use its full functionality, you have the apps there. If you're launching a full virtual desktop, you can launch that there. Recent files as well as recommended files will show up there over on the right as well. Now, one of the interesting or really new and innovative things that is also part of this is, as you notice in that feed there in the center, there are a number of items that have action buttons on them, right? You can accept, approve, or decline a variety of different things. And this is meant to bring the work and the action right into your feed. You can see how, if you start out at the beginning of your day and there's a whole bunch of things to take care of, click by click, you can be done very quickly with looking at and handling some of your normal, typical day-to-day types of activities. And it's a very easy way of getting the noise out of your day, taking care of fairly rote activities that you need to, either as a manager or as an individual contributor, and sort of clear out your desk so that you can concentrate more on things that require maybe more thought. What's also possible here is launching micro apps. So for example, under this example of requesting PTO, not only can I just do approvals and declines, but I can create micro apps that enable me to use specific components of existing applications. So very quickly in here, without having to launch a full HR application and then hunt through the menus and find where it is I do PTO, I can just do it very quickly here in this little form, this little micro app that exists inside of my workspace. And these micro apps can be built for a variety of different applications, as long as they have an accessible API. So that means, even your own maybe in-house or custom applications you're building, as long as you have the API or some of that code access, and you can build these micro apps to take care of these functions. And so you can see how this starts to get customized for the organization, and it certainly gets customized and personalized for the individual user as well. As mentioned, a lot of these micro apps and integrations are provided out of the box. We're delivering a number of integrations with, in particular, SaaS applications, as many of them have sort of the modern APIs that you need. And we've built a lot of very common micro apps as well. And these will just continue to grow, and the out-of-the-box capabilities as generated will keep getting added to. But we realize that not everything is going to be suited for out-of-the-box type of delivery from Citrix, and you're going to need to implement some of these things on your own, and maybe it's your own in-house application or something on-prem that you've deployed or built over time, or it's a specific SaaS service that's newly launched or that we haven't covered yet. So there is this micro app builder type of environment, very easy to use, drag and drop fields into it. You can see here we're building actually a mobile application. The mobile experience with this workspace, as you can imagine, is very much like a social media feed and very intuitive as well, and really has the potential to kind of overhaul the way we think of mobile productivity, where before we were getting distracted a lot, now we can start to streamline a lot of these activities in a mobile environment. But this micro app builder is very easy to use, and to be able to create your own micro apps and extend the capabilities of this workspace as your organization needs it. So as you've been going through and describing what this workspace does, remember one of the key statements I made earlier, that the workspace is it's sort of our general term for this, but it requires networking. It really needs the analytics in order for it to function. So just a couple of quick notes on things that are happening behind the scenes and what I just described that you might not have picked up on right away. So from a Citrix networking perspective, think about in that workspace how we're saying we're unifying and we're aggregating so many different application sources and data repositories, right? That means that you may have things that are being delivered out of a virtualization farm in your data center. You may be using a cloud or multiple clouds, more likely, as many organizations are multi-cloud. You have SaaS applications, which are in their own form of cloud, and data is being stored there. You may have a hosted private cloud. You may have additional data centers or new data centers that you acquire through M&A activity, branch offices that are connected via WAN. And so all these resources being distributed all over the place, needs to be connected in a reliable, secure, high-performance, and optimized way in order to create that workspace experience. And that's been a big part of our networking strategy, is whether it's in hardware or our own hardware, our bare metal, which we just announced, or it's building our services into a cloud or clouds. We're sending Citrix networking technologies in the appropriate form into all these different types of locations where your resources reside, and then providing an overall infrastructure or architecture via Citrix Application Delivery Manager to manage it all, have cross-site, cross-cloud visibility, and to be able to set policies and have the insights and visibility that you need to manage it. So that's an underpinning, certainly, of this new workspace strategy that is absolutely vital. And then on the analytics side, as I've been going through and I've been talking about all the smarts that are built into it, and how does the workspace learn to prioritize what's important or what's urgent now, what documents or applications do I want to recommend to this end user, and then certainly things like what is our security posture around the device that the end user is using or the applications they're trying to access. Are their behaviors normal for this end user, or does it all of a sudden look like the same person is trying to log in from two different locations 3,000 miles apart, right? All of those things are analytics as a platform being built into all of our technologies. So Citrix Analytics has telemetry in our endpoint management, in our workspace clients, in the applications that are delivered by the workspace, in the content, data, and documents that are delivered there, as well as all across the network. And all of that comes into this platform of Citrix Analytics, and then we're able to generate key insights around security, around productivity, or around how the performance of the infrastructure is impacting end user experience. And so there's a variety of things that are built into the analytics platform, different ways that we can surface this information and provide value back to you as an IT person, or to you as a business, to understand how the sort of broader concept of the workspace is operating, how your end users are interacting with it, even down to the point of kind of looking at adoption metrics and what are they using the most, where are they getting stuck, all those sorts of things. Right. So while I've been talking a lot about this new concept of the workspace intelligence, I just want to emphasize here at the end that this is built on a foundation and platform of analytics as well as networking, all intertwined into this unified end-to-end type of solution. And so that is the powering a better way to work. That is the new workspace, and I invite everyone. This is just an introductory primer to the vision, how it's constructed, and where we're headed. You get some design principles for us and how we're pulling from consumer technology influences, but there are a wealth of other resources as well, product tours and demos, and certainly reach out to a Citrix representative or partner if you want a more in-depth discussion about how this can be applied in your business or your industry. And so with that, Robin, I'll close out that first section.
Great, thanks, Calvin. So I think we're going to move into our Q&A session now, and as we do so, I do want to remind everyone that if you have a question, you can go ahead and submit that in the Ask a Question area on the screen. Just type the question into the text box and then hit Submit. So, Calvin, it looks like our first question is asking if Citrix Workspace customers today will be entitled to the new intelligent features that you covered here.
Yes, they will be. This is getting added into our Workspace lineup, and certainly we know we've got a number of customers that have been taking advantage of our transition and trade-up offers from into Premium, Workspace Premium Plus, and certainly Workspace Premium. So these features are getting added into that Workspace entitlement.
Great, thank you. Do people need to migrate their virtual workloads to the cloud in order to take advantage of the new Citrix Workspace capabilities?
That's one of the great things about the Citrix architecture and our hybrid multi-cloud approach in general is no. And in fact, with that Workspace, in particular Workspace Premium Plus entitlement, and you have the ability to run in a completely hybrid fashion. You can keep workloads on-prem and continue, or even for that matter, keep the management on-prem, but still be able to use many of the cloud-based services that are part of the Citrix Workspace. One of the ways I encourage people to think about this is, the workspace itself is really a separate thing from the virtualization. right? And virtualization is, you can think of it as one of those service feeds into a workspace. It's one of the types of applications that you can use via the workspace. But the workspace itself, it is a new service. It is a cloud-based service, and you can take advantage of things like analytics or we didn't talk about it today, but things like a secure browser, other things that are part of that workspace service without having to move what you have already existing on-prem.
Great. It looks like the next question here is about the interface. Does the new Workspace app replace Storefront?
Yes and no. So it can. It doesn't have to. We're actually introducing some capabilities to support some on-prem storefront resources and enable that to integrate into a workspace solution. Because as we just talked about, we know that not everyone is ready to migrate all the workloads off-prem right away. So there are some integration points. But I think really the way to think of this is less as a replacement, but more as a larger solution than just the storefront. Many of the types of resources and virtual apps and desktops and things like that that have been used can become part of a broader Citrix Workspace solution. And so, yeah, it does, in technical terms, does supersede it, but we are building bridges and migration paths for people as well. But it is a larger thing than the storefront, so it's not really a one-to-one kind of replacement.
Great, thank you. Okay, so security analytics, do they integrate with SIEM solutions?
Yeah, so actually, as mentioned, the analytics itself is a platform, right? And analytics for the purpose of security is just one of the use cases, one of the kinds of things that we can do with it. And yes, we've been integrating in with a number of other solutions, such as Microsoft Security Graph. We know that has been a common ask, as Security Graph is collecting data from billions of connections daily, and that information just helps build a better security profile and a better user behavior profile. We're also integrating with Splunk and exporting information out to there. We know a number of customers run their security operations out of Splunk, as well as working with other identity providers like Ping, for example, has built some integrations with our security analytics to use some of our user behavior risk scores in order to determine what type of authentication, or whether extended authentication or advanced or multi-factor needs to take place. So it is a platform. It is we're building integrations and we're looking to make that extensible.
Excellent, thank you. And we have a question here asking if someone can create their own custom micro app.
Absolutely. Yep. So we touched on the micro app builder that you saw there, and so effectively, as long as you have access to to APIs or the code, then yeah, absolutely, you can build custom micro apps.
Great, thank you. And then it looks like our last question here, which identity providers are supported by Citrix Workspace?
Yeah, so that's something that we kind of quickly went past, is this idea of unifying and aggregating all these applications and data sources into the workspace. One of the key things there is that the authentication happens into the workspace, right? And then you are single sign on there, and then that authentication is passed through to other applications that you launch from there. So you get the security aspect of it, you also get the ease of use. Now, behind that is the idea that our strategy really is to broker or enable your choice in identity providers, right? So whether that's Active Directory or Azure Active Directory, Coming soon here will be Okta. I already mentioned Ping, and we announced just recently support for Google ID. We're supporting all the major identity providers such that whatever makes sense for your business or your application that you're using, we can integrate that into the workspace.
Great. Thank you very much, Calvin. So that brings us to the end of the presentation today. I would like to thank Calvin for taking the time to provide us with a very informative presentation. And I'd also like to thank the audience for joining us today. Last thing, I would like to invite everyone to join us again on June 26th, where Andrew Hewitt of Forrester Research will be joining Calvin for a webinar on how to deliver a better digital workspace experience through intelligence and automation. You can register for this webinar as well as other upcoming events at citrix.com/events. Thank you, everyone, and we hope you all have a great day.